Okay, I'm back again. I know I don't get out here very often, and I've brought my wingman, Blue Benadum, to help support this whole conversation. And for those of you that have been following the work I do, are familiar with the book I recently wrote, which is called Training the Dark Side, in where the concept of training revolves around what we refer to as flow. And essentially, what flow training is, and we're going to kick this around quite a bit, is freedom. The word that comes to mind when I think of it is freedom. Rather than being caught up in structure where you're so belabored by, oh, I've got to spend 10 weeks in zone 2 before I can ever step out of that aerobic lifestyle and eventually dip into some anaerobic activity and so on and so forth. And what I've learned through writing this book and offering it up to the people that were interested in hearing about it is that the concepts are universal. So I've gone from one end of the spectrum to complete opposite end of the spectrum in where CrossFit athletes doing the workouts and getting amazing results. Just this past weekend, had one of my clients in Saudi Arabia in the Tough Mudder 8-hour event, and he didn't win, but he did end up in 7th place. And the people that beat him deserve to beat him. They're some of the best the best in the world. But he's been following this flow concept in his training, putting in big volume and high intensity training, well beyond anything he's ever done before, and it's been very effective. And my guest here, Blue, has no stranger to flow training. He's been well. You share with them, Blue. Tell them what you learned about flow training and why you feel that it might be something that people might want to look into.
Yeah, and I came into this flow world after a long time in the traditional methods and marathon training, endurance athlete training, and I think I wasn't expecting. I don't know what I was expecting. I mean, what I love is anytime somebody comes at something with creative thought and something fresh. And I think where I was at, I was 40, 41 when you approached me with this, and I had done 60 plus marathons, and I had sort of had my fun. And I wasn't expecting to reach such a high level of fitness through it. I think I had signed up for Boston in 2021, and I had the elite field entry, but I don't think I expected as much as I got out of it. So I think what fires me up about it so much is when you really shift on such an extreme in a lot of ways. Flow training is a big shift from what most endurance athletes are doing. How much it can change the results, or how much it's like we plateau, and then this is a great example of how to get through a plateau that could be years long, and one that you might not even realize you're in, which was my situation. So yeah, I had come in, I was doing 80 to 90 mile weeks. It was like, if I was training, I was running 80, 90 mile weeks. I think that kind of volume for me was really where I unlocked all that sub 230, type of performance in the marathon. I think having a capacity, an aerobic capacity on that level is really great for things like the marathon. But when I dropped into flow, and I was just doing kind of like verbatim what you were prescribing from a coaching, program. And I think I was doing 45, 50 miles a week max. And that was hard for me to sort of look at that at the end of the week and be like, okay, Richard, I trust you. And then 3-4 months down the road, and I'm running, that one Strava that I sent you where I was, at 5:19 average or whatever it was, 5:17 average for 20 miles. It was like at 41 years old. It's like, what's going on? And that was one of your time trials where you would prescribe, give it 2 miles of effort and then pull back for a couple miles, then push again for a couple miles, then pull back for a mile. So it wasn't like this marathon pace, 90%, like very specific pace, type of a run. It was like, here, just play with it, go out there and see what you have with your fitness. And so to see those kind of paces and an approach like that, and then how my mind shift had switched over those months of how I was even thinking about running, it was a whole paradigm shift. And I think why I love flow is because it becomes this paradigm shift for how you approach every single workout, how you approach your training cycle. It's complete change of everything. And Yeah. And you don't have to like, and this sounds like a lot to stomach, but I think you just go day by day, like you do in anything, and I think as time goes on, you start to find yourself with a new relationship with your sport. And that's what I found. So,
Well, and a couple things regarding the volume shift. Um, it wasn't really intentional to draw the volume down. It's just the way it laid out.
yeah.
And what I find is that because the intensity is involved in all the workouts, there's always going to be some um, point in time where you're going to drop the hammer, you're going to really open up and just kind of feel your body expand as you get into it. And then being perceptive about the time to retract. When do I need to lay back off of this? And when can I, charge back into it again? And I liken it to like trying to knock down a wall. You've seen these old movies where the guys are trying to storm the castle and they all got this big log and they run at it and they hit it once, they back up, they hit it again, till eventually they knock that wall down. I think flow training is a lot like that because what you're doing is you're opening up your capacity to produce work. And when you are segregating work, so for example, laying down, I kind of alluded to it earlier, 10 weeks or so of base specific training, yeah, you're developing your aerobic capacity, which is wonderful, but that's about the only thing you're going to get from it. I mean, time on your feet, okay, sure, but the biomechanics are not considered. How you open up your stride when you're into a little bit greater intensity is paramount. And essentially that. I forgot the name of the movie that John Travolta was in where...
Space Cowboy.
No. The one where he lost it. Like he had some kind of a brain tumor thing going on. Anyway, there was this moment in time where he had this epiphany, like he could read through books like crazy, and he was able to do all this stuff, right? In other words, his mind expanded like he opened up part of his brain that wasn't functioning, right?
Yeah.
And, he was speaking languages that he never learned before. And so the thing I'm getting at and what really, really got to me was this point where he was standing out there and the wind was kind of moving through the trees. And he was watching as the trees kind of bend with the wind and his body kind of started to sway with the trees, right? And I don't know if anybody else got anything from that, but I liken it to, the cycle of life. You look at, you're a surfer, you know this. You're waiting for the waves. They come in sets, right? They don't just steady state come at you, or you have this. It's an ebb and flow kind of concept. It's the way things happen in nature, right?
Yeah.
So flow training is essentially mirroring that kind of mentality where you're going to ebb and flow in your energy system, and you're going to start to develop greater and greater capacities within it. So you're not going to be absent the anaerobic capacities. You're not going to be absent the aerobic capacities. It's all still going to be there. And the difference is they're integrated. They're always involved. And they're not sequentially organized. It's not like, okay, I wrote the script that says, do this, then do that, then do the other thing in this order and spend this much time doing this. And your body doesn't play like that.
Yeah. And I would add to that what you've done here and what flow training is in essence isn't just a rewriting of a script. It's not like this is just a method that's a different organization of work, which I think anybody could sort of grab onto that and say, oh, this is just a different like prescription. But it's a completely different, to your point, it's a completely different approach. And for myself, coming from that surfing world, with the running and being like all in and running for over a decade, I had definitely lost that soul connection to the activity, which is kind of surprising coming from my background where I was like, I'm always using metaphors in surfing, of like how it applies to life, waiting for the wave and taking what comes to you when it comes and being ready to take whatever comes and being adaptable. And all of those things were like sort of like family metaphors. My dad was a surfer as well. And that was just sort of like my culture. But I had gotten so far into the numbers game with marathoning and 95%. And it's like then the judgment that comes from that, like, oh, I'm not performing where I should in this part of the cycle. So disconnected from your own flow, right? And it's like, that's what you've really done. Like you've created, it's not even the format. You've created like this approach that becomes an opportunity to reconnect with yourself simply by how you're looking at your involvement in it. So
yeah, it's difficult for a lot of people. And I
mhm.
will, as I told you, I'm writing a revision. It's 2.0, I refer to it as. I'm probably going to come up with a better name for it before it's done. But I'm pretty well through it. And there's not much difference in the approach to the work, but there's a difference in the way it will be interpreted. So
Mm.
some people really need to be told what to do. And I
Yeah,
don't want to leave those people out. They
right.
want to be told, okay, I need to know, what am I doing on Monday? How much time am I going to spend doing what I'm doing on Monday? And so on and so forth. I don't want that to be the case. I mean, certainly there's going to be structure. I want you to do this much work, but the way you ebb and flow in the work is relative to what the task is going to be.
Well,
So,
for 5 months, I did that. You gave me every workout for 5 months, and it was very, for myself, that was a very useful. And I mean, if I wouldn't have had that 5 months of you saying, do this on this day, just like this, I don't think I would have created the relationship where now I feel like I have it a bit more within myself, to like go out and know what I should maybe do that day. But to your point, if you don't have that initial introduction into it, that path, it's like you're parting the leaves in the forest so someone can see the path. You got to part the leaves, and I think that's what you do with your
well, yeah,
programs.
and so the other thing that I've learned, and for those that are not familiar with me, I didn't just jump in and write this thing out of just an opinion. And this. I think for the past, Jesus, almost 30 years now, I've done clinical diagnostics on athletes from all types of sports. I mean, from Gen Pop, just people that are just trying to find out, whether they're dying or not, or whether they're able to conduct themselves in exercise, to elite athletes in a variety of sports. And so I came from the clinical track. I came from really dialed into the numbers. Okay, your threshold is this, and this is what your heart rate's going to be. This is the energy cost associated with what you're doing here. And then to get to a place where I said, you know what? Why am I not taking account of what perception provides to this process, right?
Hmm.
What about perception? How does it feel to you when you're doing this? So, and I talk about this often. It's like my new thing is what I call trust but verify. So I'll do a VO2 max test on a runner and identify what his threshold is, and then take him out and run him and see what the consequence is of staying at that heart rate, or whether he can achieve more or less than that heart rate, and what that might look like. And I will adjust the numbers accordingly. And then what I tell people a lot, and this is kind of hard for a lot of people to pick up on, and I'm going to be careful when I say it, is that I tell people your monitor should be a way of gathering information to let you know what occurred, but not be a directive to tell you what to do.
Yeah,
Because, I get it. When it says 150 beats per minute, for some people, 150 beats per minute means this is hard. But you
yeah,
didn't need the watch to tell you that, right? You knew that
right.
going in. That's why you looked, because you said, this shit's getting
Yeah,
hard. And,
yeah.
I need to know what's going on here. And,
Mm.
or I have people that get so caught up in the numbers, they set out to race and they look down and the numbers are not favorable, and they
Hmm.
back off. Their body wanted to go. Their body's
Mm.
saying, let me go. I'm ready to go. I want to race today, right? And there's a whole different mentality and a whole process physiologically when you're under that circumstance where you're in race mode, where you have more allowance. But you're being filtered by this device that's telling you, oh no, buddy, you're way in over your head. And then when you finish, you stand there like an idiot and say, you know what? I knew I had more in the tank. I could have done more, right?
Yep.
Well, but
Yep.
it's because you never had a relationship with your body and the work at large.
Yeah.
And so, in essence, this is what flow training provides. It helps you to get a kinship with your body once again. It will open you. You'll start once you trust it. I mean, clearly you have to trust it for a while. And then as you start to get into it, you start to evolve and you start to trust it, you start to see that, wow, I can achieve so much more than I thought I could. Or I was way in over my head. That could be the other end of it. I was way in over my head for too long. And allowing myself this break here and there has really allowed me to get past those hurdles that I've been facing.
Yep.
And I'm high on it. I really am high on it. I mean, as you know, and I've said it before, it took me about 4 years to write this stupid thing, and to come out with a book that's about 167 pages without a whole bunch of templates in it. It doesn't seem like a big read. It's not a big read, but you could probably within the first 40 pages of this thing start to think, start to identify with what it is you're trying to achieve. And if I don't miss my guess, you'll start to, if you trust it, you'll start to realize that you had greater potential than you allowed yourself. That for someone to dictate to you what you should do for a great length of time or not is a mistake.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd like to add is something that I love about flow is the mechanical side of it, because obviously the more you do of anything, the better you get at that thing. And it's so interesting when you start to do, the skill work every day, like these high intensity stride type of, minus air, do that every day. And then you do the higher intensity VO2 max, the anaerobic, all that stuff. What you're also doing is you're mechanically using your body more dynamically more often. And so what's really interesting is, like, a few months into this, your ability to at really low heart rates output really powerful strides. So low cost, of work and like high performance. I started seeing things like for myself in the days where it was like 650 to 7 minute pace. It was an average aerobic run for me. So most of my volume, besides the key workouts in a week, were around that pace, like just under 7 minute pace. That was a recovery. Every run in my cycle training with you that first time started to be like, every run was like 605, 610 average, was every single run, every single day. And then faster. And then the long runs, obviously down to like 517. But that was just like, people were looking at my Strava saying, what are you doing? Like, you're never recovering, and they're totally missing it because, again, they're looking at the numbers. But it was just interesting. Low heart rates producing that kind of work. So like I would do a fartleks workout at like, something like a 5 minute pace, couple minute interval, recovering really easy, low heart rate. And I'm still running like a 550 pace. And this is like months into training, but that was a real big thing for me of understanding that, okay, the mechanical effect of this is that my body's just outputting this power and it doesn't really take much because I'm just going there so often. So anyway, I just wanted to add that in, like the mechanical.
Well, that's, at the end of the day, all of this training is about adaptation. You're trying to achieve an outcome, which is adaptation, right? And if you structure workouts too tightly, then you're limiting the potential for adaptation, global adaptation. So not like this one day and this the other day, but always. It's global. You're always, being able to shift gears in your pace. Drop the hammer. Let's just say in a race scenario, you need to drop somebody. You have the confidence in knowing that if you punch it up, that you're not going to get into deep water, but you're going to take him there, right? Because it's not going to be comfortable for you to take him where you're capable of going. And it's because you had this ability to expand and contract in all of your workouts, which is reality. This is the way you're going to race. You're going to have times. There's no such thing as a steady state. Let me just hold the hammer down and go the whole way, because that gets static after a while. Now, this is how you get locked up. And energetically, you start to fail. The whole thing just goes south after a while. So you need to be able to move a little bit. You need to be able to come in and out of the intensity, in and out of the pace, in and out of the energy systems, so that you have much more robust approach to the training. So honestly, it's been a few years now. And I guess the reason I'm regurgitating this now is because it's fresh in my mind because I'm rewriting. And I'm going back and looking at what I've said. And I'm looking at the things that I want people to, I'm looking at the cause-effect relationship with what people have learned from it, what the frustrations might have been from it, and then trying to open it up to a broader audience. And obviously one of the things that I'm interested in doing is because I now one of the new tricks is Hyrox, right? And when I wrote this thing, Hyrox really didn't exist. I was really talking to marathoners. I was talking to obstacle course racing athletes and CrossFitters. And Hyrox, boom, all of a sudden we got a functional fitness hybrid sport that comes along, which is actually a perfect fit for this concept of training.
Yeah.
Because you've got to run 8 1-kilometer events interspersed with all this high intensity training. So you can't just decide I'm going to hold my pace down to nil and just try to suffer through it and try. You're never going to win like that. You need to be able to bust some eggs, right? I'm pretty excited about where this is going, and those that are maybe thinking about, well, maybe I should get a copy of this book. By the way, the link will be in the bottom of this thing. Certainly pick it up. It's still absolutely valuable, and that'll be the stepping stone for what comes next. And so, Blue, am I going to see you when I come out to California? I have a meeting with.
Yeah, I'm going to find you. I'm definitely going to find you when you come out.
Well, I'm going to be training a hunter on Friday afternoon, and then Saturday, and then I'm leaving Sunday morning. So I'm going to go from Tennessee to California to spend a day and a half with that ding dong, and help him maintain this title as a world champion in Hyrox.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I'll come find you guys. Yeah.
All right. Listen, I appreciate you coming on, folks. I'm going to leave a link to the current book here. And by the way, I think I'm also going to leave the bundle link so I can include that 20-week training plan that you did, Blue.
Yeah, it's solid. Yeah. That's that plan. I mean, the cool thing is because it's all volume based or time based, regardless of what you're used to. Like you had said, how we didn't intend to reduce the volume, and because that's that way you wrote that plan is nothing about how many miles you're running. It's all time based. So yeah, you get out of it whatever, it's scalable is what I'm saying, to different levels.
Sure. Well, and again, I've had people doing that, and we've also had people using the Dark Horse version, which was for CrossFit. And I did a podcast with a fellow recently out of Switzerland that did the program, 8-week program, 285% increase in his strength.
Dang. Nice.
In 8 weeks.
Wow.
And we're talking about running, and we're talking about energy systems and flowing. Guess what? Putting that into the CrossFit training, all of his strength moves improved by that much.
Wow.
Crazy. It was crazy.
Well, speaking of the crossover with CrossFit and all that, the RAD global team is running TSP. There are a bunch of CrossFitters or CrossFit background, but they've been using flow training for the speed project coming up. And so it's been really cool to see. It's interesting how well CrossFitters, that'll be at the end of March. So they have another month of training, but it's been really, I think CrossFitters naturally, they get it really quickly, like they're like, oh, that makes sense intuitively. I found that runners are way more resistant as a whole. Hyrox athletes, again, they're really receptive because they know they've got to play a different game now. So I think the traditional endurance athletes, they're very hard-headed. They're very stuck in tradition. I would invite all of those people to take a step outside of your tradition for a minute. And by a minute, I mean for 5 months, and try something totally different. Yeah. It'll be a game changer for you. And the CrossFitters, they already know. And the Hyrox athletes, they already know. So,
yep. Good stuff. Well, listen, thank you so much, everybody. Get yourself a book. See ya.
Yeah. Peace.